right, I'm not gonna lie, doing YouTube, at least at the beginning, is super, super hard. And one of the main reasons for that is you can be doing the right stuff, you're constantly improving, you're doing all these different things, but the results just have not come yet. And if you are in that position where you're like, okay, I feel like I should be getting the results, but I'm not yet, I wanna show you in this video a couple signs that if this is true of your channel, it's a great sign that you are going to be blowing up on YouTube before long. So today I'm going to go over the 6 signs that you're going to blow up on YouTube. So let's jump in. All right, so sign number 1, and I think this is kind of big picture. It applies to business, it applies to your personal life, and then it also applies to YouTube. So the idea comes from one of my favorite books. It's called The Go-Giver. And inside the book, it's talking about the main character, Joe, and he's this guy that works in sales, and he's very much the go-getter. Like he's always trying to go out, do stuff. He's very much involved in like the hustle culture and that kind of stuff. Getting ahead is his main goal. And to do that, he's always kind of looking out for himself, thinking of his best interest, and more than anything, just thinking about what would get him to the goals that he has. But inside the book, what is very interesting is he meets a successful guy and then gets connected with the successful network of people, and their way of doing business and their way of doing life is a whole lot different. Because for them, instead of just focusing on themselves and what's going to best serve them, they instead put their focus on other people and they serve others and they think about the interests of others. And inside the book, it breaks down these 5 laws of stratospheric success. And I think there's one kind of major point in this book that's super applicable, and if it's true of your YouTube channel, it's a really good sign that your YouTube channel is going to go pretty far. So law number 3 here is called the law of influence. And it says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. And basically what that means is being obsessed with other people's goals. So that's why one of the best signs that you are going to blow up on YouTube is that you realize it's not about you, it's about them. Because, and this will actually connect to the second one, I think there's a couple phases when you start on YouTube. Phase 1 is you ask yourself, what do I want to make? Like, what content am I passionate about? What ideas do I have? What content do I want to make? But then when phase 2 happens, you go from that to now asking, what does my audience need to hear? So here's how I think about business and content strategy overall, and I think this is very applicable for your YouTube channel. So if you run a business, probably what you have is you have your target audience, and then there's some kind of starting point that they're at. And then that's kind of the undesirable state. And then they have this desired outcome, like the place they want to get to. And then in theory, what your business does is it helps them create a bridge from where they are to where they want to go. And each of these different pillars are different steps or problems you help them overcome to get closer to this desired outcome. And honestly, YouTube is like the exact same thing, where we can think about our target audience, think about where they're starting, think about where they're going, and then each one of these steps can be an individual YouTube video that helps them get closer to that desired outcome. So that's why number 2 is not only are you realizing it's not about you, but you're solving a specific problem for a specific person. So instead of just making content for everyone, you choose one specific target audience and you want to solve a specific problem for them. Number 3 is probably one of the most simple ones and the most effective, but it surprises me how many people actually miss it. So one of my favorite books is also Atomic Habits. And one of the things that it taught me more than anything is how to establish a habit. For instance, when I was wanting to start looking like this guy, and I wanted to work out, do all that, I tried in the past with varying levels of success. And by varying levels of success, I mean, I did not stick with it basically at all. I would do it for like a couple days, obviously not seeing any results, and then I would just give up. But inside the book, one of my major takeaways was James Clear talks about mastering the art of showing up. So instead of trying to make this incredible change in your life, he talks about starting super small and mastering the art of showing up, meaning be consistent. So a couple quotes I love here. It says, an imperfect plan executed consistently is better than a perfect plan executed inconsistently. And I think that's so true on YouTube, where so many people try to have the best strategies and do that, but what they're missing is the consistency piece. And then I also love this quote. It says, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. So that's why the number 3 sign is you are uploading consistently. Because if you can just do that, if you can just upload consistently, you are ahead of so many people that are thinking about starting on YouTube or start, make one video, and then totally give up. Which leads us to number 4, because you can upload and you can be consistent. But if you miss this one step, you can have 50 to 100 videos and still make no progress. So there's this guy named Naval Ravikant, which I'm a super big fan, and he talks about something very interesting in this video that I think will be helpful to understand.
I think Malcolm Gladwell popularized this idea of 10,000 hours to mastery. I would say it's actually 10,000 iterations to mastery. It's not actually 10,000, it's some unknown number, but it's about the number of iterations that drives a learning curve. And iteration is not repetition. Repetition is a different thing. Repeating is doing the same thing over and over. Iteration is modifying it with a learning and then doing another version of it. So that's error correction. So if you get 10,000 error corrections in anything, you will be an expert at it.
And I love that point there. So we're not talking about just reps, like doing the exact same thing over and over again. He said instead what we need to focus on is doing iterations. And I think you can use this for your own YouTube videos. So how I like to think about it is I want to choose one improvement per video. And the benefit of YouTube is there's so many different skills and things that you can improve for any given video. Everything from the idea, the title, the thumbnail, the production, the lighting, the camera, the audio, the setup, your on-camera presence, how engaging you are, to the scripting, to the editing, and that's just scratching the surface. But if you want to turn it from reps into iterations, then you take one improvement and say, okay, I'm going to improve this one thing for the next video. You do that, and with every iteration, you get so much better. And you've probably heard this story, but I think it's worth repeating. So there is a parable of the pottery class. And basically what it means is there was a pottery class that was split up into 2 different groups. And this group over here, for the semester, they had one goal and they were graded on making one pot. So like, okay, make the best pot you could possibly make, and you'll be graded on that. And then group number 2, instead of the quality of the pots, then they were instead graded on how many pots they made. So like, okay, for the semester, you are graded purely on the number of pots that you make. So the more you make, the better grade that you're going to get. And the interesting thing is by the end of the semester, group A here that's focusing on making the perfect pot possible, it did not turn out that great because they had just not had the experience and they took so much time to do it. And that one pot still was not very good. And what's interesting on the group number 2 is their first pots were totally terrible, understandably, but as they did more and more and got better and better, their final pots by the end of it, not only had they made more, but they are also a much higher quality than group 1. And the same thing is true on YouTube. So you can spend all of your time, 40 hours, trying to put together the perfect video, but instead, if you can make shorter videos or videos that are less good and get more of them, I think quantity absolutely leads to quality. So number 4 is not only are you consistent on YouTube, but then you're also getting better with each upload. All right, number 5 is super helpful if you want to actually make money from your YouTube channel. So there's a guy named Pat Flynn, and he wrote this book called Superfans. And it popularized this idea of if you can have 1,000 true super fans of what you do, then you can make a pretty good income from it. Where instead, a lot of people see these YouTubers that are getting hundreds of thousands and millions of views, and they're like, oh, to make money, I need to do that. But what Pat Flynn would argue is you just need 1,000 people that love what you're doing, and that is a much better way to make an income. So going down here, because I've seen this happen actually a lot, is you'll have one channel where they're averaging like 50,000 views per video, and then from the money that YouTube pays them, they might be making $300 from that, which is not bad. But there's other channels that average like 1,000 views per video. And because they've tied it to their business and they're actually solving a problem for someone, they can get 1/50th of the views and actually make 10 times more money. So instead of just chasing views, I like to think about how can I chase impact for the people that I'm serving. And again, it goes back to the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And law number 2 says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. And one of the best indicators of that is not only views, but number 5 is you're getting more comments and shares. Because I think those are great indicators that people not only are consuming this content, but if they're sharing with their friends and if they're commenting and sharing how it's impacted them, that's where it's a great indicator that you're making an impact. All right, number 6 is arguably the most important one because this is really the 80-20 of being successful on YouTube. You understand that YouTube is a click and a watch platform. So the 2 main metrics I like to look at are your click-through rate and then also looking at the overall retention. And there's a specific way I like to track them. So what I like to do, because people ask like, okay, what is a good click-through rate or what's a good retention? Well, what I like to do is I want to get a baseline for my videos. So for my click-through rate, I'll look at maybe the first 24 hours. So after 24 hours, what is that click-through rate? And then instead of competing with some arbitrary number, competing with myself in my past videos. And then for the retention, looking at the overall line, trying to make it as flat as possible, but then also focusing on what percentage of people are still watching after the first 30 seconds. Because if you can get them to click and get them to watch, your video is so much more likely to perform well on YouTube. So that's why number 6 is your click-through rate and retention are improving. Now, the next obvious question is, how do you do that? How do you make people click and how do you make them watch? Well, in this video, I break down exactly what makes a clickable video.